Act 1. Holiday in Hell. Golden Sands, Bulgaria. The name itself evokes images of paradise. Located on the coast of the Black Sea, it's a sprawling resort town designed for one purpose: pleasure. It's a place of sun-drenched beaches, cheap beer, and nightclubs that throb with music until dawn. Every summer, it becomes a magnet for young people from all over Europe, looking to escape their ordinary lives for a week of unrestrained fun. In July of 2014, a group of friends from Germany, all in their late 20s, arrived in Golden Sands for exactly that reason. Among them was a 28-year-old man named Lars Mittank, and his story would turn this seaside paradise into the setting of a waking nightmare. Lars was, by all accounts, an entirely normal and well-adjusted young man. He was from a quiet town in northern Germany, worked a stable job at a power plant, had a long-term girlfriend, and was very close to his parents, particularly his mother, Sandra. He was not a seasoned world traveler, nor was he known for being reckless or impulsive. He was a regular guy, a fan of the football club Werder Bremen, looking forward to a typical lad's holiday with his high school friends. Nothing about him suggested he was on the verge of becoming the subject of one of the internet's most baffling and disturbing mysteries. For the first few days, the trip was exactly what they had hoped for. They spent their days on the beach and their nights in the bars. But the carefree atmosphere took a sharp turn on one of the final nights of their vacation. In a fast food restaurant near their hotel, Lars got into a minor argument with another group of German tourists. The dispute was trivial. It was about football. Lars's team, Werder Bremen, had lost to their rivals, Bayern Munich. Words were exchanged, and the argument spilled outside. According to his friends, Lars separated from them for a moment. When they found him a short while later, he told them he had been in a brief physical altercation. One of the other men had punched him in the head. While he wasn't seriously injured, he complained of pain in his jaw and a loss of hearing in one ear. The next day, he went to a local doctor. The diagnosis was a ruptured eardrum. The injury itself wasn't severe, but the doctor's advice would prove to be fateful. He prescribed an antibiotic, Cefsol 500, and strongly advised Lars not to fly. The change in air pressure during takeoff and landing could cause serious complications. This presented a problem. The group's flight back to Germany was scheduled to leave the very next day, July 7th. His friends, who had work and commitments to return to, couldn't change their plans. A decision was made. The friends would fly home as scheduled, and Lars would stay behind. The plan was simple and seemed rational. Lars would find a cheap hotel for a night or two until his ear healed, and then he would take a long-distance bus back to Germany. He seemed calm and agreed to the plan. He waved goodbye to his friends at the airport, assuring them he would be fine. He was now alone in a foreign country, with a minor injury and a straightforward plan to get home. But as the sun set over Golden Sands that evening, a dark and inexplicable paranoia began to creep in. Act 2. The Night of Fear. Left to his own devices, Lars Mittank found what he was looking for: a cheap place to spend the night. He checked into the Hotel Color, a budget motel on the outskirts of Golden Sands. It was a far cry from the lively resort he had been staying at with his friends. The hotel was known to be a bit run down, a place that attracted a less-than-savory clientele. It was here, in the isolation of his new room, that Lars's sense of reality began to unravel. Later that night, he made a frantic phone call to his mother, Sandra. The connection was poor, and his voice was strained. He was whispering, his words laced with a terror his mother had never heard before. He told her that something was wrong with the hotel, that it wasn't a safe place. He asked her to cancel his credit cards, fearing they would be stolen. And then he said something that turned his mother's concern into sheer panic. He told her that 4 men were after him. He wouldn't or couldn't explain who they were or what they wanted, but he was convinced they were coming to either rob or kill him. He told his mother he had found a place to hide and that she shouldn't worry. Before she could get any more information, the call cut out. Sandra, thousands of miles away in Germany, was terrified. She tried to call him back, but he didn't answer. A short while later, he sent her a text message about the antibiotic he had been prescribed, Cefsol 500, asking what it was. It was a strange, almost clinical question in the midst of his apparent panic. Throughout the night, the sense of dread only intensified. At one point, Lars texted his mother that he had managed to get away from the 4 men and was now hiding on top of a building. His messages were becoming more erratic. The rational young man who had waved his friends off just hours earlier was now seemingly on the run from shadowy figures, his mind descending into a vortex of fear and paranoia. His mother, desperate to help, worked through the night. She booked him a seat on a bus scheduled to leave from Varna the next day. As a backup, she also booked him a plane ticket for a flight leaving that same day, hoping against hope that he might be able to get a doctor's permission to fly after all. Early the next morning, on July 8th, Lars decided he couldn't stay at the hotel any longer. He checked out, hailed a taxi, and told the driver to take him to Varna Airport. He seemed to have a new plan. See the airport doctor, get a medical certificate clearing him to fly, and take the plane his mother had booked. The airport, with its security and crowds, must have seemed like the safest place in the world. Act 3. The airport. When Lars Mittank arrived at Varna Airport around 6 a.m., he seemed to have regained some of his composure. He called his mother one last time. He spoke calmly, telling her that he had arrived at the airport and was about to go through the check-in process. He sounded relieved, and Sandra, hearing the relative calm in his voice, felt a wave of relief herself. It seemed the nightmare was almost over. He was in a public place. He had a ticket home, and he was just a few hours away from safety. It was the last conversation she would ever have with her son. Lars then proceeded to the airport's medical center, located on a different floor. His goal was to see the airport's doctor, Dr. Kostakostov, and get the all-clear to fly despite his ruptured eardrum. He entered the small consultation room, leaving his large backpack and all his other belongings just outside the door. According to Dr. Kostov's later testimony, Lars seemed nervous and erratic, but he was coherent. He explained his injury and his desire to fly home. The doctor examined him and confirmed that flying was indeed not advisable. He was in the process of explaining this to Lars, and the conversation seemed normal, if a little tense. And then, the door to the consultation room opened. A man in a construction worker's uniform entered. It's important to note that the Varna airport was undergoing renovations at the time, so the presence of construction workers was not unusual. The man was likely just an airport employee entering the room for a mundane reason. But for Lars, in his heightened state of paranoia, this stranger's appearance was the final trigger. His demeanor changed instantly. He became extremely agitated. He began to tremble, and according to the doctor, he muttered in German, "I don't want to die here. I have to get out of here." Before Dr. Kostov could react or say a word, Lars bolted. He jumped up from his chair and fled from the room as if his life depended on it. In his panicked escape, he left everything behind. His wallet, which contained his money and ID, his cell phone, his passport, and his large backpack, which held all of his clothes and possessions. He ran out of the medical center with nothing but the clothes on his back. A terrified man running from a threat that, to everyone else in the room, simply did not exist. His sprint for freedom was about to be captured on camera, creating a piece of footage that would become legendary. Act 4. The Vanishing. The moments after Lars Mittank fled the doctor's office were captured by the cold, indifferent lens of the Varna airport's security cameras. The footage is silent, grainy, and just over a minute long. It contains no obvious clues, no clear antagonist, and no explanation. It simply documents the final, frantic moments of a man about to disappear from the face of the earth. The video shows Lars running into the main airport terminal. He is moving at a full sprint, his movements athletic and powerful. He doesn't look injured or disoriented. He looks like a man running for his life. As he runs, he glances over his shoulder, as if checking to see if he is being pursued. No one appears to be chasing him. He runs past the check-in counters and bewildered travelers, his path a straight, desperate line towards the main exit. He doesn't stop. He doesn't hesitate. He bursts through the glass doors of the terminal and out into the bright Bulgarian morning. The camera outside then captures the final, shocking sequence of events. Lars continues his sprint across the forecourt, past the taxi ranks and cars. He runs directly towards the airport's perimeter fence. This is not a small fence. It is a formidable barrier, approximately 8 feet, 2.5 meters, high and topped with barbed wire. Without breaking his stride, Lars reaches the fence and, with a display of incredible agility, climbs it. He scales the massive barrier in a matter of seconds, navigates the barbed wire at the top, and drops down on the other side. He lands in an unkempt field of tall grass and sunflowers. He gets to his feet and runs into the dense field. The sunflowers, which stand over 6 feet tall, quickly swallow him up. He disappears into the sea of yellow and green. And that is the last time anyone has ever verifiably seen Lars Mittank. The footage is profoundly disturbing because of its ambiguity. It's a video of a man in the grip of an overwhelming terror, but the source of that terror is completely invisible. Immediately following his disappearance, a search was launched. The Bulgarian police, aided by airport security, combed the sunflower field and the surrounding woods. They used thermal imaging cameras and search dogs. A private investigator was hired by his family. His mother, Sandra, flew to Bulgaria and plastered the area with missing person posters. But it was all to no avail. The vast field that had swallowed Lars whole gave up no clues. They found no body, no clothes, no footprints, nothing. It was as if he had run over that fence and simply ceased to exist. Act 5. Theories in the silence. In the years since Lars Mittank vanished into that sunflower field, a deafening silence has been left in his wake. With no body ever found and no further evidence ever emerging, the case has become a vacuum, filled only by speculation and endless theories discussed by an army of internet sleuths. Theory 1. The 4 men were real. The most straightforward theory is that Lars was telling his mother the truth. Perhaps the argument over football was far more serious than his friends realized. It's possible he got into a conflict with dangerous individuals, Maybe local criminals or drug dealers. In this scenario, the 4 men he mentioned were real, and they were indeed pursuing him. They might have followed him to the airport, and the construction worker who entered the doctor's office could have been one of them. When he ran, they could have abducted him from the sunflower field. The main problem with this theory is the lack of any evidence. No witnesses saw him being pursued, and no ransom was ever demanded. Theory 2. A sudden and severe psychotic break. This is perhaps the most widely accepted theory. It posits that Lars was not running from a real threat, but from the terrifying phantoms of his own mind. This could have been caused by 2 things. First, an undiagnosed mental illness, like schizophrenia, which can manifest in young men in their late 20s. The stress of being injured, alone, and in a foreign country could have triggered a first catastrophic psychotic episode. Second, some have pointed to the antibiotic, Cefzil 500. While rare, drugs in this class have been known to have neuropsychiatric side effects, including paranoia, confusion, and hallucinations. Could an adverse reaction to his medication have plunged him into a state of temporary insanity? This would explain his panicked calls, his erratic behavior, and his decision to flee from a perceived threat at the airport. If this is true, he may have simply run into the vast, unfamiliar wilderness and succumbed to the elements. Theory 3. He chose to disappear. This is the least likely, but still possible theory. Some have suggested that Lars wanted to escape his life in Germany and start anew. Perhaps he was in some kind of trouble back home that his family didn't know about. In this scenario, the entire paranoid episode was a ruse, a performance designed to create a confusing trail so he could vanish without a trace. This seems improbable given his close relationship with his family, and the genuine terror he expressed in the phone calls to his mother. Why leave his phone, passport, and money if his goal was to start a new life? To this day, the case of Lars Mittank remains wide open. His family has never given up hope, continuing to search for answers. The silent, grainy footage from Varna Airport is all that remains, a chilling digital monument to his disappearance. It's a terrifying reminder of how fragile our grip on reality can be, and how quickly a normal life can spiral into an inexplicable and perhaps unsolvable nightmare. The last image we have is of a young man, a son, a boyfriend, a friend, running desperately into a field of sunflowers, vanishing forever from a world he suddenly no longer understood.